Deconstruction 101. Is deconstruction biblical? Well, depends on who you ask. If you are asking the religious leaders in Jesus' time, no, not at all. If you were asked Jesus, absolutely. There are instances where Jesus will say something like, "You have heard it said, but I say," and at those moments, he is deconstructing what they think to be true. Welcome to Mad Christianity, where we are dedicated to helping you love God and love people. In this video, I'm going to show you some examples in the Bible and in history where deconstruction is needed to move forward as followers of Jesus, what it means today, and some practical tips before you start deconstructing. So, let's get into it. When you first hear deconstruction, what is that? What are your thoughts on that?
So my initial reaction to hearing the word deconstruction would be taking things that you have learned and unlearning them.
Yep, that's a pretty good definition. And just to simplify it even more than that, just rethinking what you know. I think a lot of people have this idea that deconstruction is such a complex thing, and it really isn't. With that definition, we have some examples from the Bible where deconstruction actually took place, and it actually happens all over the place. Probably the first type of deconstruction happened whenever you got Adam and Eve talking to the snake, and the snake's like, "Did God really say?" And at that point, deconstruction was happening. But here's some more specific examples of deconstruction. In Acts 10, you have Peter's vision. And in that vision, Peter is seeing all these things that they weren't supposed to eat, Jewish people weren't supposed to eat. And God, I believe, was telling him to eat them. And Peter said, "I can't eat it because it's unclean." And God said, "Don't call unclean what I've called clean." Peter then meets with a Gentile who is actually a God-fearing person, and revealing to Peter that regardless if this person was a Jew or if he was a non-Jew, this person was a clean person in God's eyes. And up until that point, Jewish people were regarded as the most, pure kind of people. In Romans 1 and 2, Paul is writing to the church in Rome, and I believe the main audience was a Jewish audience, and there was some, non-Jewish people there too. But in the first chapter, he is telling his readers how sinful non-Jewish people were, and if you were a Jew at that time, you would probably have the same reaction to an amen that we hear at church today. In that transition of chapters 1 and 2, Paul then takes the same sinfulness he was calling the non-Jewish people and flipping it over to the Jewish readers, y'all are the exact same people. He shifted their focus on, okay, only the non-Jewish people can be bad, the Jews are okay. And it's we both have our own flaws, regardless if you are a Jew or a non-Jew. In Luke 10, the parable of the Samaritan, Samaritans, if you didn't know, were half Jews, and so they weren't pure people. And so he's telling the story about, this guy is on the road and he's almost dead, and you have these Jewish figures, these leaders in the synagogues coming by, and they totally ignore the guy. And then you have the half Jew, the Samaritan, come by and aid this person, and and do the work that is needed, and the work that God is calling everybody to do. And at that moment, Jesus was, reconfiguring the idea that people that aren't, I think you're getting the point, is that what people used to think before, Jesus totally flips it on his head. And to me, I see that as a form of deconstruction. So now with history, we got several moments in time, really crucial moments, where deconstruction takes place. And one of the first parts of deconstruction that I can think of is just the gospel itself. The gospel that we know that is popular in mainline Christianity in America today was not what was popular in the early church back then. So, they started off where, Jesus came to set us free from our sin. Nowhere in his mission was he talking about, him needing to be the sacrifice because no one else could do it type thing. He came down to set people free from their sin. And I know, that might sound a little bit similar, but when you think about stuff like, penal substitution, and what the early church believed, which was the Christus Victor, they're totally two different images of God. What do you think about that?
It's very clear, like you were saying, that deconstruction is a ongoing process, both in Scripture and since Scripture has been finalized. But it's interesting that since in a lot of sects, since the King James version was released, and then it goes further for others, but that's where deconstruction stops. That is where we finally got to a point where we know everything. And the truth is that we're never going to get to a point where we know everything. And that's my real takeaway from this, is we should never stop denying truth.
And there are some cases where people take deconstruction a little too far. Because the gospel, there were it's like 7 main theories, and they were all, for the most part, like conflicting with each other. Next, in our historical example, we have Martin Luther. If you guys aren't familiar with him, Catholicism was the major thought of Christianity, and Martin Luther said, no, it's not. He totally went against everything they believed in, and obviously people took that to heart and then brought the Reformation about. Now, like you said, people make the mistake of stopping deconstruction. The Reformation wasn't the end of Christian thought, or should be the end of Christian thought. It should have kept going to progress the faith.
It's a very pivotal moment in the history of Christianity, because up until that point, you have the Roman Catholic faith, which most people probably learned about in their middle school, maybe junior high, maybe early high school textbooks, to see that Roman Catholic faith was based off of a very overpowering country. I don't know if they were a country back then, but whatever. A group that was looking to take over the entire world. And so they weren't too concerned with what the theology said. They were more concerned with how to get everyone on the same page and how to greater affect the groups that they could take over. And so whenever Martin Luther came and said that these things are wrong, he wasn't necessarily speaking as much as he was speaking against the theology. He was saying that this government has taken over this theology, which I think really correlates to America today. Is this government has taken over this theology and making them believe this way, and this is the way that Christ would really act and really teach in these instances.
Man, that's so crazy. I didn't even connect the two, but yeah, I think historically Christianity's always been like that too, which we got to figure this out.
Right.
So on the next example, we have slavery, and this was more so, I feel like, more driven by law than it was, rethinking slavery. It's a very complicated subject because a lot of different people in history have different thoughts. Slavery was okay for 400 years and backed up by people of the Bible, and slaves were given Bibles that did not contain the book of Exodus because they didn't want the thoughts of freedom to be in their heads and that they could be free. Whew. So yeah, it's not, the church itself didn't, it was more law-based than it was church-based, but still, I think the abolishment of slavery, led to rethinking, because we definitely don't think it's a good thing today. I've never came across anyone said, "Man, remember the good old days?"
Right. I think, unfortunately, this is an indication that shows just how quick we are to make the Bible say what we want it to say and then ignore all the rest, which is very unfortunate. We were talking about that with Taylor earlier this weekend, and it's just unfortunate. And beyond that, there are so many people that are content with talking about what the Bible says and then not interested at all in living out what it says.
Yeah, just to give some context there. So Taylor shared a post with us on Facebook about her old church putting on a conference, and one of the, or was it the whole conference, or was it just like a workshop? I can't remember.
The whole conference.
The whole conference was about loving the LGBTQ plus community, but more so in the way of how to change them versus accepting who they are and loving them.
And then I don't know, I probably shouldn't say that.
But yeah, so that's kind of the context there. The Bible has been used to weaponize a lot of things. And in our next example, we have interracial relationships or interracial marriages. That was actually another example of the law coming into play before the actual thought of, as a whole, like, is interracial marriages okay? And unfortunately, it had to become a law for it to be okay to happen in every state. Which I find to be very disturbing. And that happened like within this century, I believe. It wasn't like a couple hundred years ago when they said It was okay. It was
my grandparents, who are both deceased at this point, but I have a family member who still says that if God would have wanted blacks and whites to marry each other, then he would have made them the same color. And that was learned through my grandparents, who both were, I mean, churchly people, and I think, great people. They did the best that they could, but in that time, I mean, they didn't realize that what they were saying was so ignorant.
Tattoos. I remember growing up in church how so many people were looking down upon that, and now for the most part, I feel like you see a lot of church leaders just covered in them.
Right.
And now it's okay. And now I know there's a group of people out there that still don't believe it, even though it's been explained to them time and time again what the context was of that verse. It's still, I don't know. I don't understand where that disconnect is.
I don't either. I mean, you have a tattoo on your arm that is that to you means to go and reach all nations, correct?
It kind of started off as that, but more it's just more of like a perspective thing.
Gotcha.
Just realize that I'm not the only one here, and it's not all about me. But yeah, initially save the freaking world.
Yeah, well, that's a lofty goal right there. Yeah, but either way, I mean, I don't see any harm in that, of being mindful of other people. It doesn't make sense that would be a reason that you're not going to heaven anymore, Jay-Z.
Yeah, that'd be unfortunate. That's it feels like it's more of a preference thing, just like dressing up for church. Like nowhere in the Bible do we ever see someone must dress their best to be at church. Right. But yet that's the mindset of most churches in America.
Yeah. I saw a post on Facebook today that was talking about I apologize if you have ever come to church and been and didn't feel like you belonged because you had a hat on. That is nonsense.
Yeah,
I know, especially for you. You always wore them just for that point.
Drinking alcohol, not everyone should do it, but there was that point of time where it's just like, and still for the most part, I know even in the church denomination that we used to attend to, like pastors couldn't drink alcohol, or it was very looked down upon. And now it's just kind of like, it's a relaxing thing. Some people will drink wine for their health. Some people will drink it just to calm down for the day or whatever. It's just so crazy after all, from big issues to just the small little things. And the list is endless. We can go the whole time talking about little things that people have changed their minds on.
Right. I know that I talked a little bit about drinking in our mental health series. If you're doing it because of stress and doing it to relieve stress, then that's never going to fulfill you. That's never going to help you out. But I have a lot of friends that, drink to hang out with friends and have a beer or two, whatever. Or do it to unwind. As long as you don't have an issue with it where you can't stop, then I don't see anything in Scripture that tells you not to.
Yeah.
Personally, the Scripture that is always brought up is, I don't even know what translation it says, but wine is a mocker, beer is a brawler, and those who are led astray by them are put to shame. But led astray by them is the key there. The people that, if you know that you can't handle those things, then don't do them.
Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So let's pivot from there and talk about why deconstruction happens today. And a lot of it, from my point of view, stems from church hurt. A lot of people, especially, and I don't. It might have happened beforehand, but for me, attending a pro-conservative, pro-Republican church, a lot of things for me got kind of flipped on its head whenever the 2016 election happened, and just people's thoughts on different things kind of just like, it was just mind-blowing to me, and for me, I was just really confusing. Alex, what, in your experience, have you seen deconstruction happen?
So I was a youth pastor in 2016, and I just remember being, I don't know, I wasn't too outspoken because I knew my audience was mostly Republican voters. But the little things I did say, and it kind of culminated with, I want to say it was George Floyd's death. It may have been one of the other deaths around the time, that I said, before you judge these people, because a lot of what was out in the media was he was on drugs at the time and whatever. Before you judge these people, I mean, just stop and think about your own your own lives, and have you ever been down? Have you ever been whatever? Have you ever made a decision that you were not proud of? And in those moments, I was met with complete hostility. Well, I never would have made these choices. I never would have fought back with a cop, which is clearly not what happened there. But these type of things, and that really made me question what for one, what effect I was having, and for two, what choices I was making and being a part of this organization.
You are watching this video, you probably fall into one of three groups. You've experienced church hurt, and you are wanting to know more about deconstruction, or you're someone that's going through deconstruction and they're just kind of curious from the outside. Maybe you heard someone, a church figure or even just like a faith figure say like, hey, Christian or deconstruction is not okay, and it's leading so many people astray. So if you are curious to know more about how to go about deconstruction, we're about to tell you that. But before that, if you are enjoying this content so far, give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you are enjoying this content. And we are aiming to put more stuff out like this in the future. Before you deconstruct, there's some I just want to kind of lay some ground stuff out there, especially if you're new to the whole thing. Different I guess warnings for deconstruction. So just know, if you take part in deconstruction, the first warning is you're gonna lose friends and family. I know that's like probably the first reason why you wouldn't do it, but no one told me beforehand when I started questioning stuff. Like, I was just gonna be basically an outcast from mostly my friends. My family, for the most part, is okay with me on that aspect, but I also didn't publicly go around telling everybody I was questioning my faith.
For me, it's been pretty much the opposite. My friends have been a lot more lenient, and my family is the one that have questioned a lot of what I had to say, but honestly, I mean, the family that has been resistant to the things I had to say. Not like I'm trying to push it on them, but the ones that have been outspoken against me even thinking about anything, about questioning anything, have been ones that didn't, I wasn't really concerned with the outcome of that relationship anyway. So I think it really shows who really cares about you and who really cares about your relationship with God. Even, I don't know if I should say this, but even my mom, who has not been thrilled with some of the things that I've decided on my own, has said, as long as you have a relationship with God, I don't care. So I think that's big.
People that you thought were you could be really close to and open to would just think you lost your way.
Right.
And I mean, in reality, you're just doing historically what's always been happening. And so that goes to my next point, is you're going to feel alone. And I can touch on this later on, but just know that you're going to feel alone, but know that you're not going through it alone. There are literally tons and tons of people, at least in the American culture. I'm not entirely sure what other Christians in other countries are thinking, but I suspect, especially since we've sent a lot of missionaries everywhere, that they're probably going to go through the same thing at some point.
It's very discouraging whenever you've lived in a certain sect, a certain group for so long, and then you start to realize that your ideas don't always line up with them. Even if you agree with them about a lot of things, it seems like that 1%, even that, 10% maybe, but that 1%, small percentage, makes them think that they don't want to be around you. That's such a painful thing whenever you've spent time around them for so long. But there are people that love you and agree with you. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to find those people.
If you are not aware, we've come to encourage you with these warnings. And warning number 3, not all deconstruction is good. I think going back to what we were talking about with the Gospels, people change the idea of why Jesus came to die. Some of them are a lot more harmful than others, and I think you see a lot of that in the church today. And especially if your gospel is causing you to say that someone should be shot in the back of their head because of their lifestyle choices, that is a extreme form of deconstruction. And it doesn't just go one side too. When you spend enough time in the deconstruction area, you listen to a lot of progressives. I don't know if there are any progressives that deconstruct the other way. For me, it's always been people that are conservative become a little bit more progressive. But in any case, there is a danger where if you go too far into deconstructing, you start having the mindset of cancel culture, which I don't think is completely acceptable as far as what Jesus would think is okay. Right. I think there should be grace for people, especially if they ever decide to change their mind on some things, where a lot of our culture today is, they keep receipts. They say, well, you said this, 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 and this. And so they become the judge, jury, and executioner.
I agree. Cancel culture is nonsense. At one point in our life, if not many points in our lives, we can all look back to things that we truly regret saying, especially whenever we were young. Everyone's young at one point. Jay-Z made a great point, very well covered his topic, but I do want to say that the title of this can be a little misleading. Not all deconstruction is good. Yes, he's right. He's 100% right for what he just said. But if there's anything that is causing you any kind of questions, follow those and see where they go. Don't be afraid to see where the road takes you. That is my takeaway from this warning.
So the first tip of deconstruction is you need to have a goal. Now, if you are wanting to stay a follower of Jesus, to go off of Alex's point, it's okay to go down different roads to see where that leads. But if you keep the principle of loving God and loving people in mind, I don't think that would be very much a problem, as long as you have your goal in front of you.
Right.
Now, some people have goals just to not be a Christian anymore and to, just figure out what's not true anymore, But that is the main thing, is just to have a goal, where you want to end up. Just let that goal be flexible too, because a lot of times where you end up is just like, it's not where I want it to be, but it is what it is.
This I also would like to say, it's important to let other people know what your goal is, especially if you're in a relationship. So the reason I say this is, whenever I was married, I had told my wife that we should look through all of these different beliefs and decide what we believe for ourselves. And at the time, we had already been talking about drinking, which wasn't allowed in our church group, our belief system. So she took that as, I'm just trying to make excuses for drinking. And that wasn't the case. I was just trying to figure out what all I believed. Anyway, so I say that all to say that having a goal, it's very important that if you're in a relationship, that you communicate that goal clearly with the person you're in a relationship with, so that they don't think you're trying to gain an advantage in some area or another, that you're really seeking the truth and trying to live by God's standard.
And if you are in a relationship, just even being open about, hey, I'm having a lot of thoughts about certain things, and this is kind of, being open to your spouse is important, whether or not they understand you right away. That may not happen. They might not get it right away, but just being open is really important. Second tip is to diversify your authors and creators. Now, when you are in church, or whenever I was in church, I was always told to not listen to certain authors because they had different thoughts of what my church believed. In result, never looked at anyone else's opinion on certain matters like salvation, or same-sex marriage and issues like that. So when you are diversifying your authors, I would encourage you to look into those authors that people told you to stay away from, and to hear what they have to say about a certain thing, because the part of deconstruction is learning what the other thoughts are regarding that certain topic.
Whenever we did our college program together, I was told that I couldn't listen to anybody that was atheist, or I didn't ask him about anything else, but anybody that was atheist I couldn't listen to. And that really confused me, because in my mind, if we are trying to reach everyone, then why shouldn't we be trying to reach atheists too? So it would be helpful to know what they thought so that I could talk to them about those things. But so I agree. Diversifying everything is good for not only almost said declassifying, deconstructing, but also, even if none of your opinions change, just being able to talk to people about what they believe, what they think.
Yeah, and having that thought, just having that knowledge of what people believe will benefit everybody as a society going forward. Like one time I sat and listened to a Muslim talk about their faith, and probably the biggest thing that stuck out to me was a lot of what media portrays as Islam, or even what the church portrays as Islam, is a very extremist part of that religion, and not at all represented in everybody who practices that faith.
Yeah, I feel the same way with Christianity. The people that are put out, on media, social media, news outlets, are either the extreme right or the extreme left. And I, having deconstructed, I have no doubt that it's the same with other faiths, that we get this very bad outlook from our news outlets about Muslims, and about maybe not as much Buddhists, but definitely Muslims, and people that are of the Islamic faith, and most of that is, we see the extremes. They show us the extremes, just like in Christianity, and it's unfortunate whenever you're in the middle of this, not having deconstructed, and you just think, well, this is how they all are.
Yeah. So diversifying your authors and creators is so important. And going back to, feeling alone in your deconstruction, my third tip is to find a community. And shameless plug, we have a Facebook group, and if you look up Mad Christianity, it's a really small group, but if you are someone who is looking for support, everybody in that group will support you. You can ask questions. What do you think about this? And if you don't have Facebook, you don't want to get on Facebook, I totally 100% understand. You can actually go on Reddit, and there is a deconstruction community there that is helpful as well. Just through looking through some posts, people have questions on different things, and for the most part, people are very helpful. Aside from social media, you could also find a community. There are communities of churches where, I won't say everyone's gone through deconstruction, but if you find churches that have leaders who have more of a progressive mindset, I think those have the potential to be really good communities. Like the church that I go to is kind of a mixture of every kind of political thought, and which is okay. But the most important thing is that I've found people in that church that I can talk to about these things. And if you can do it on a personal level, I would definitely encourage that.
Community is the most important, because there are so many circumstances that make us feel alone. So if you can find anywhere, whether it be the Mad Christianity group, or another group online, or an actual building that you go to, whatever it takes for you, community is important, and we really hope that you find that. no matter where it is.
Speaking of social media, bonus tip number one: sharing on social media can be beneficial and damaging. So I share this because it's not always a guarantee what reactions you'll get. The beneficial part of sharing what you're learning on social media is you'll have people who are literally thinking the same thing, but have not gone to the extent of posting it on social media. And some people will reach out to you, and people that you wouldn't have expected to, and end up helping you on this journey of deconstruction based on what they've studied so far and their thoughts on certain things. Obviously, the damaging part is, if you're friends with a bunch of your church people, it get really, really dark really quick.
I guess this is one of those things that they say, you find out who your friends are. And then you can decide, which is the nice thing, you can decide which is more important to me. Is it the ones that like me whenever I'm perfect, or is it the ones that I say something that they don't necessarily agree with and they still love me? Or is it that they despise me whenever I say something that they don't agree with personally? And that'll definitely sift through friends for you real quick.
Yeah, for sure. That's how I know Alex is a good friend, because I say a lot of stupid stuff. And we're still friends.
Hey, I'm the king of stupid, so.
Bonus tip number two: keep up with your mental health, because going through a lot of your past can be very traumatizing, and the worst thing you can do is just going through it and not doing certain practices to make sure you're okay, or not seeking therapy to even sort out your past. Can be very damaging to you, and people need you in the present.
Yeah, this is very true. I'm one of those people that I can think of a literal instance in my mind about 15 years ago where I said something really stupid. And I still, to this day, will have moments where I think of this moment and it's like, oh, that was a stupid thing to say. And I'll beat myself up over something I said 15 years ago, literally. And obviously it's nonsense, but if you don't have anywhere to put that, if you don't have anywhere to separate that, to whether it be able to talk to someone else about that, or to be able to isolate that, or to be able to talk with the therapist about that, then it can really hurt you, because you can beat yourself up literally to the point of wanting to drink every day, or wanting to whatever, over something that happened 15 years ago. And that's not how it's supposed to be.
A lot of people could probably relate to that.
Yeah.
Just still having regrets from
Yeah.
a long time ago.
And the crazy thing is, it's not something you have to think about every day, which a lot of people I'm sure will understand whenever I say this. It's not something you think about every day, but once a month maybe you may think about a time whenever you did this 15 years ago, and it just drives you nuts and makes you feel like less of a person. And that's not the case, because you're growing and you're becoming a better person.
If you are new to mental health, we just finished recording a mental health series that I thought was very beneficial. Going from, kind of seeing why there's stigma in the church, how to rethink about mental health, to what resources are available, and practical steps that we've taken to help us with our mental health. And I will share that with you guys, probably either on the screen or in the description, but we do have a series on mental health. Bonus tip number 3: journal if possible. I think you would just appreciate to see how far you've gotten in your deconstruction, and more likely more than likely you will come across someone who is going through the same thing, and they're going to need guidance on how to go through it. And you have a record of your journey that you can share with others. And so I find that journaling is very helpful, even if you don't like physically write something out, even if you just uh, pull up a notepad on your computer or your phone and just kind of type everything out there. That's helpful, and it will be helpful for other people when that time comes. Now we're going to go through some affirmations just to help you get along through your journey. You keep these, if you decide to journal, keep these affirmations in your journal just so whenever you feel like, whenever you are going down like a kind of a dark path, or you're thinking dark thoughts whenever you're going through this, I hope these will help you in your journey. So the first affirmation is that God will always love you. There's the nice thing about God is that people don't get to make rules for him or her, whatever you feel like God is. That could go through a whole rabbit trail on that. But God will always love you, and if you keep that in mind, I feel like that helps with this, especially, for me, coming from what I thought about salvation was God wanted to punish everybody unless they were perfect, and having that thought of God will always love you was very helpful for me, to know that God isn't out to get me on what the things that I'm doing. Second one is, it is okay to deconstruct. Going by what I said, examples in the Bible, examples in history, that literally is the same thing for you. Like, you have permission to deconstruct, you have permission to rethink about certain things that you have always believed. I mean, I'm sure you've already done deconstruction. It's just it hasn't happened in such a large magnitude, if you are about to go through it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with what you're doing, and it is totally normal.
Definitely think it's okay to deconstruct. I think the only time that it's not okay to deconstruct is if you're in a communist community. I try to get communist in there somewhere.
Yeah, if you want to live by the rules of communism, probably not okay to deconstruct.
Right. So the rest of the time, I mean, if you live in a free society, why not be able to rethink whatever you're dealing with? Which is unfortunate, because a lot of the church today thinks that any kind of secondary thought, any kind of whatever they aren't preaching extensively, is a direct attack on what they're trying to say, which is unfortunate. It makes religion seem like a cult.
Yeah. And unfortunately, having a church or being a pastor of a church is equated to having a business. And just like a business, if you lose people, you probably will lose money. And I can't say that's the same case for every pastor that speaks out against deconstruction, but it's just a thought that I have, that a lot of people,
It's very true,
would rather keep people in their church.
right? We just talked about Greg Locke. Yes.
Yeah, we had this. Alex has shared a video with us about Greg Locke saying how Christians can't be Christians and vote Democrat.
Yes, that's one. Yeah, I mean, it's and I read or heard in a podcast that is not any kind of Christian or secular or anything, just a podcast, that it's so much easier just to host it is a historical podcast. Let me get my words together now. That said, it is so much easier for any kind of religion or any kind of cult to get a following if they have a common enemy. And so for him just to come out and say, well, we don't like gays and we don't like whatever. If you vote Democrat, I'm doing it the Southern accent.
Why is it always the Southern people? There's a common theme there.
The crazy thing is that's not even the Southern accent. It's the Panhandle accent. It's whenever people don't have anybody near them and they just do what they want.
Last affirmation, and we've said it many times, that you are not alone, but it's important for you to have that in your mind, that when you are doing this, there are literally thousands of people. I don't know about millions, but historically there have been millions of people who have gone through deconstruction. But currently, today, there are thousands of people who are rethinking evangelicalism, how to deconstruct. So the first thing you want to do is you want to pick a topic. I know when you're thinking about deconstruction, there are so many things you want to deconstruct everything at the same time, but it can be a little overwhelming, and then maybe you just end up not doing it. And which is fine. You kind of move at your own pace. But I would suggest starting with one topic and then going from there. One topic might be, does God send people to hell? That's a very common thought. But there are many different thoughts out there. And so once you have your topic, you have so many resources at your disposal. You have, you can look up podcasts, going on probably Google and putting in whatever topic you're looking for, putting in podcasts after that. And I'm sure Google will lead you to different podcasts on that topic. There's also YouTube. Nice thing is a lot of the resources out there is free. It's monetarily, money-wise, it's free. And sometimes podcasts and YouTube stuff isn't very exhaustive, and sometimes you need to get into the exhaustive resources. So looking up books on those topics is helpful. Look into the resource, come up with your own opinion. And remember, if you are wanting to stay in Christianity, does your opinion change? Does it still allow you to love God and love people? I know that was a lot for you guys, but that is what I would call Deconstruction 101, everything you need to know. And if you are not a part of our Mad Christianity Facebook group and you're on Facebook, go ahead and send us a request to join, and we'd love to have you in there to talk about whatever you want. And if you need a topic to help you with deconstruction, start off with, we started and finished a series on can homosexuals be Christian? And we have that series right here on our channel, and we will see you next week on Mad Christianity.